Hello and welcome back, and that's right, today we're going to look at the new Synology DS423 Plus, and we're going to see how it fares at Plex Media Server using some 720p, 1080p and of course 4K media. Now for those of you that followed this channel for a while, you know how these things go. I go through a bunch of different file formats, some of which require converting and changing, and some of which can be played natively. But if you are new to this channel and new to these videos, a few disclaimers off the bat. For the rest of you, use the timeline, skip forward about 3 to 4 minutes. But number one, we're utilizing today's NAS over the local area network. What that means is I'm accessing this NAS via the LAN. I'm not using it remotely. If I wanted to access this remotely, I've already set up a remote connection here. I could have used a remote connection for this, but unfortunately, most users that are using Plex predominantly enjoy their media primarily on the local area network, and then afterwards they like to have the facility and the feature to access that media either outside their home or remotely within different areas of their home when they're on the commute, when they're on holiday. So a lot of users want to know the capabilities of a system, and therefore when I do my tests, I do run them on the local area network. However, lots of elements of what I'm doing will involve pushing the system in a way that would be simulating remote level access. What do I mean by that? Well, it is when a file is being changed on the fly. So for example, in today's video where we're looking at the DS423 Plus, we can look at the control panel there, and as you can see with the information on this NAS, we're running a NAS here that's running on an Intel Celeron processor. That's a quad core, and it's got a 2 GHz per core that can be burst up to 2.7 GHz, and with each of those, with the CPU architecture, there is integrated graphics there. So there's an onboard graphical manipulation client that will do things like encode, decode, transcode, and converting files, and 2 gig of memory, something that I will talk about later on for lots of reasons. But when you are accessing a file, be it on your TV, using a mobile phone device or any kind of client thing, sometimes the file you are accessing is going to be just stupidly big. Maybe it's Avatar 2 in 8K and you want to look at it while you're sat at a bus stop on your mobile phone. You don't need that massive 100 gig file. You want a nice manageable one. So you ask the system to reshape that file on the fly, live, and reshape that file to something better suited to your either internet or network connection, or better suited to the resolution of the device that maybe can't support that huge resolution, or is a better suited file format to the device. So maybe it's a certain changing a file from an MP4 to a WMV, changing a FLAC audio file to a simple MP3, or because you're using a file format that is not supported by your client device. And the most common example of that is HEVC, highly efficient video codec, otherwise known as H.265. This is a compression technique for taking multimedia design for the big screen and bringing it down small enough that you can watch it on a device in your pocket or on the comfort of your sofa. Now previously, compression techniques like H.264, which are largely open source model, are completely free and everyone's using them, but HEVC requires a license either on the client device that you're watching the file on or on the server that you're playing the device from. Now, the reason I bring all of this up is this is when a system may require some oomph, some capability and some power to change that file. Now, throughout the course of this testing, I'm going to be playing these files on the web browser. This web browser does not have HEVC support. Now, I could have used the mobile, the desktop client app. I could have used this app here, which has on my Windows PC an HEVC client, and it would play back the files natively, absolutely no problem. And if you are utilizing a client device that supports HEVC, or indeed any of the file formats and resolutions that you're going to be using, you're going to be using less of the system resources. But that doesn't suit everyone. A lot of users require these files to be changed. Sorry, the deep intake of breath because I talk a lot there. So in order for this to be fair and to properly judge the system that we're testing for today's Plex Media Server tests, I'm not using a client app like this one. I'm using a web browser to force the system to have to work harder on these files, because a lot of users out there will be relying on server-side hardware encode, decode, transcode, or conversions, whatever you want to call it, rather than client-side, because maybe they're running an Amazon Fire TV or a PlayStation neither of which have HEVC support natively, just some apps and services have it. So that's enough of the old gibber gabber. It's been a long old intro. We're running this on OBS, running here. I'm in the top corner of the screen. I might remove myself from there, but a few little extra bits and bobs along the way. We are going to be testing 720p and 1080 files, and just to get things up and running, here is a nice Common Garden 720p file running here. So that's again running that there. We can look at the bottom of the screen, and we can see it's going to play back this file. We're watching over the local area network. We would expect it to play back this file in 720p. Indeed, if we go ahead and copy that file, open it up in a new browser tab there, because what we want to do now while that's playing is on the Plex side here, we want to manage the server, go into the settings, and make sure we can keep that dashboard there on screen, because what we want to do is monitor the CPU and the memory utilization throughout this video. We can also just double check we have enabled the transcoding engine. We've got a Plex pass, so the NAS is going to be converting these files using the system resources. On top of that, for local access over DLNA, I have enabled local DLNA access there, but we're not really going to be utilizing this system in that fashion. We're still using a Plex UI. So again, we'll go back into that dashboard. Sorry, I came out of it accidentally there. Go into the dashboard, move it down, and there's the CPU utilization. Again, if we continue playing that file as we left it earlier on, you can see there's not really been much of an impact there on the CPU and memory utilization on the right hand side of the screen. Skip along, absolutely fine there, no troubles, nothing to write home about. Now if we scale up to a 1080p file, so with a 1080p file we use Little Shop of Horrors again, 1080p, 3 megabits per second bit rate, absolutely fine there. We shouldn't see any difficulties whatsoever in playing back this file. Again, we can open it up at the bottom of the screen. We can skip forward. We can go all over the place. It's fractional delay. No utilization to write home about. The odd little bump while we're doing that there, but not really anything to lose any sleep over. So now we make our way into good old 4K territory. So we go back into the NAS, and this time we look at those 4K trailers there. So we list them, and we go through them from 1 to perhaps 11. We've not decided yet on the local area network to play back these files. And this will show us that first area of concern when we're talking about a lot of these files. Now, as you can see, this is a 4K file here running at 38x21. H.264, so we're not using a complex format, 12 megabits per second, 24 frames per second there. And the resolution, again, we've got that 12 to 13 megabit bit rate there, I should say. Again, we can skip forward. We're not seeing the CPU lose its mind at all. We're seeing the file playing with a slight delay there. We'll probably see a small bump there on CPU utilization, but we should be absolutely fine there. Another thing I will highlight while this does that is another video we've had running on the channel that went live as of the time of recording. As you can see there, it genuinely went live 1 minute ago. And this is my DS923 versus DS423 versus DS920 comparison. Why am I bringing this up? The reason being that the DS423 Plus that we're featuring in today's video, this is a NAS that is using hardware that a lot of people were aware of back in the 2020 generation using the DS920. So another takeaway a number of you may have during this video is it worth upgrading away from the 920, or even if you had an older NAS, just because this is an integrated graphics Celeron NAS in 2023, does that necessarily make it worth your time, given its similarity to the 920 that came, 2.5, in some regions 3 years ago? I would say right now, it's not serviceable as an upgrade from that NAS because it's too similar. And even the DS918, this isn't a great jump in terms of architecture. And if you're not going to be using server-side transcoding, then you're probably better off with the DS923 as a more powerful NAS system overall. But that's enough of this file here. Let's come out of that and start talking about our next test file. Now this one's where things are going to get interesting, because not only is it continuing with a 4K file, but it's an HEVC file. So again, remember that private compression technique there, and it's also an 8-bit 60 megabit per second bit rate there. This is a hefty file indeed. So let's go ahead and play back this file because things are about to get a little bit more aggressive with the system. And this is where integrated graphics really start to show their value. Now we're going to let this play for a second because I'm going to show you some comparative data in just a moment. As you can see, we are playing this fantastically complex file. We're playing it and it's converting, as you can see there on the bottom. It's had to because that lack of HEVC support on the client side. Again, not for everyone, but still an interesting point. But it is playing this 42-second file, and as you can see, yes, we saw a bump in CPU utilization there on the right hand side of the screen, but not really huge. If there are any drops in frame rate, I should add, by the way, that is more than likely because of OBS running there in the background. But again, that file played sweet as a nut, barely any CPU utilization above and beyond for such a heavy duty file. Now, why am I banging on about that? Because I'd like to take a very quick sojourn into a change of subject there, because up here we have another NAS on my local area network, the DS1823XS Plus. That may have already had its Plex video go live, but whether it has or it hasn't, it does introduce the importance of integrated graphics on some NAS, because this NAS here is about $2,000 to actually, it's about $2,000 depending on where you are in the world, whereas the DS423 Plus is about 450, 500 nicker. So again, 4 times the cost. This NAS up here, very, very important. Because if we go into that DS1823, we can see there, and this time we go into those 4K files, and on this side of the screen, we're just going to quickly come out. We're going to go back into those. We're going to go into that NAS. We're going to open up this NAS's CPU memory utilization. So again, we're going to go into that dashboard. We can see that utilization there, and yes, the format with which we're accessing it has changed because we're going in via a different IP, but even then, if we open up those library of files, and this time we try to play the exact same file that we just played on the 500 quid NAS, but this time on the $2,000 NAS, watch what happens. So again, it needs to convert the file, but also it's converting it lower. It's converted the file. It hasn't kept it at 4K, it's actually downgraded it to 720p automatically. On top of that, look at that CPU spike in utilization there for the CPU inside the DS1823XS. $2,000, but that CPU has leapt up for Plex use to 70% and now crossing into 83% utilization there. Now, why is that? Again, because of the lack of integrated graphics on that CPU. Just because something costs a great deal more, if it doesn't have integrated graphics on board, it doesn't have a dedicated graphical component to handle graphical processes. Now, remember, this is because we were using that complex format there. And if you are running a setup where your client devices are not going to have access to an HEVC license, are not going to have access to client-side hardware transcoding, encode conversions, etc., this is what you are going to expect to see if you're running a NAS that doesn't have integrated graphics. And it's an incredibly important point, and that was why a lot of users were so unhappy that it took Synology this long to go for an integrated graphics processor after releasing several embedded AMD systems that didn't have integrated graphics. Had we been playing a file that didn't need it, it would have been fine. That powerful CPU in the 1823, as long as it doesn't need to encode, decode, transcode, convert, runs like a dream. It's just when it needs to use server side that we see that failing. But let's head back into the hardware architecture of this NAS, the 1423. Open that up there. A lot of ground to cover in today's video. We go into the dashboard, bring that back up, go back into that NAS, go into the 4K trailers, and we carry on with our testing. So we'll bring that CPU stack there, and we're going to go for our third file. Now, this is exactly the same as that roast duck file there, but this one is half the bit rate. Same quality, but this time 29 megabits per second bit rate there. So it should still be absolutely fine. It is converting it, but as you can see, even when it's converting it, it's still keeping it within 4K, thanks to having that integrated graphics there on board. And again, we do have a dedicated video for Plex on that 1823XS Plus series, and it's either gone live already or it will be going out shortly after this. Again, I've got to think into the future when all these videos are going to go live. But even there, We're seeing a slight bump in CPU utilization, but nothing really too egregious. And again, we can skip around in the file. We should be absolutely fine there. It's a slight delay, as you would expect from a file with a larger bandwidth, but it will go all the way through. Just before we start the next file, another little interjection. Again, I apologize for these, but while I've got your attention, it's worth highlighting when we're testing a lot of these files that remember to factor in the bandwidth and the size of these files. What I mean by that is, if you make your way into, say, these 4K test files, we can see some of these files are actually pretty small, but some of them are bloody huge. And for example, those first 3 files we tested were 780 meg, 148 and 650 meg. So we're already using around about 1.5 gigabytes of data on those 3 files, and one of them was 45 seconds long. So do bear in mind when accessing files, when you are going to be ignoring transcoding, and this is that whole thing about accessing via the local area network or not, that you may well have some hefty bandwidth. And this will become very apparent later on when we play that Top Gun file at 1.33 gig in size. But carrying on with our Plex testing there, we can make our way into the Wonder Woman file here. Again, H.264 should be absolutely fine. We can skip ahead. We're not even going to let it play organically. We're just going to skip to later on in the file. We can skip back and forth. Absolutely fine. Leave it to play. We're seeing that slight CPU bump because it is a hefty-ish file, but nothing too egregious there, and still playing in its original file format. We're going to skip over the H.264 files a little bit, simply because we know it's going to be playing a lot of those, and we're going to wait until we get to the bigger ones before we see some real impact on the system there. So opening that up, this is another HEVC file. This is Dune. Again, 16 megabits per second utilization there in terms of bitrate, and it's a 10-bit HDR file as well. And it's a Ultra HD 4K file. Skip forward. We make our way later into the file. Slight delay as the CPU is forced to catch up. But ultimately, in terms of utilization on the system side, and I have chosen a file that seems to be running at a snail's pace with lots of black screens there, but it is still doing the job and playing that file for us with, you know, the buffering there at the bottom, that dark orange, doing a very good job overall. I will highlight as well that right now we might fast be reaching the point via my capture card where CPU and memory utilization, because of OBS, may be getting quite high while keeping me here on screen. So what I might do is remove myself from the screen and disable that, because I don't want that to skew our results. So we're gone. We'll remove me from the screen there for you guys and carry on. Next up, Spider-Man No Way Home. Again, H.264. This file should play like an absolute dream. It should be just running straight away, no delay whatsoever. Skip ahead, why not? We can again skip ahead well outside the boundaries of that buffer zone there, and it will catch up, take an extra second, but we're absolutely fine. Utilization not too bad. Remember, these are 4K files as well, some of them pretty hefty files at that. Next up, we're going to ignore Rise of Skywalker because that file has been proven to be broken, and we'll move forward into The Batman, another H.264. We'll skip on right through it, but we're still going to test it out because these are different file formats, because we've not even really talked about utilizing things like MP4 files or MKV files there. MKVs are generally the recommended format for a lot of privately owned 4K media files because of the compression technique and just the general portability of those files. But the other thing we need to talk about a little bit is to do with audio streams, because much like video, audio streams can require transcoding as well, whether that is because of licensing with certain compressions in file formats, again, FLAC, MP4A. So do bear that in mind with your audio, that you may be running files that in video terms are absolutely fine and you can play them with no transcoding whatsoever. But in some cases, your videos may be of a different audio format that's not supported either, again, by your client hardware. I don't know why I'm looking at the camera when I turn the camera off, or you're going to be utilizing devices that simply cannot play certain file formats. But the Batman's running fine there. So next up, we've got Black Panther Wakanda, and the Wakanda file here, again, an HEVC, big old hefty file. and we're going to immediately skip ahead. We're not going to give it any time to catch up. This may break the playback, but it looks like it's going to be fine. It's just taking a little bit of time to compress that file, but it does look like we're still running fine there. CPU utilization pretty darn good, and if we look at my local machine, not too much of a limitation there, so we're not seeing any kind of impact there with OBS and the recording. I could have used an external capture card, but unfortunately that wasn't available for this testing. So fine there. We're down to the last two files. Avengers Endgame. With Avengers Endgame, another H.264 file, 40 megabits per second, so it's a hefty one at 24 frames per second, and it's an MKV file. But again, going down to the bottom, the buffer zone there, the dark orange, is still doing the job pretty darn well, but there's no avoiding that it is working hard. And this is where we talk about that bandwidth, because when we look at this graph here, yes, it's in megabits, not megabytes, but you've got to think about the amount of data rate that's going through, not just on the client side, on the server side, but on the client that you're going to be accessing with. Do bear that in mind with the files that you are playing there. But the file's running fine. It's still playing in the original format, and even with those audio codecs, we're still using the most comprehensive of the three. This brings us to our last 4K trailers file here, this Top Gun Maverick. Now, this is a file that has been problematic for many NAS systems for a couple of reasons. The main reason being sheer bandwidth, because it's H.264, but it's an 80 megabits per second file. And just a lot of the time, pushing this kind of file through the network is problematic. And at this point, this is when transcoding is another example of when it starts to show the benefit of transcoding there when you're changing a file into a format better suited to the operational environment. So again, we downgrade it down to a 1080p version of this file, and I've probably confused the server with all of my mucking around. We can go ahead and it would go straight into that conversion, play the file, play it there, and convert the file before it has a chance to have to try and attach and hang up on that larger bandwidth overconsumption. But even then, it doesn't seem to want to play this file as immediately as we'd like. Yep, we're playing it there. We can come out, and it's fine. And as you can see, utilization, I think it's the highest it's been is around about that 40% mark. But we're still able to play back these files quite comprehensively. But at this point, that 1 megabit network there on a shared network has started to kind of show its head a little bit. So overall, I'd say in terms of testing we've done in today's video, it's been largely a success. And I think it would be remiss before we end this video to not at least attempt to play some of the biggest files. So I'm just going to end this video with these three files here, the Jellyfish files. A 200 megabits per second H.264, a 200 megabit H.265 or HEVC otherwise known as, and the monster file 400 megabits per second 4K. Before I try and attempt to play these, I will highlight almost none of the media in your collection, for most of you watching this, is going to be this scale. This is so future-proof, it's unreal. Even this file here is 1.4 gig for 30 seconds of footage. So for the 200 megabit file there, we play that. And again, bear in mind, at this point, the limitation is almost always not the CPU, but is actually bandwidth more than anything. And it is attempting to give it a play. We can zoom in there. And even with the integrated graphics on board, it's just we're dealing with such a hefty file that in its original format, it's just not able to do it. And this is where you see the difference between a NAS that's running a Celeron and a Pentium versus NASs that are running Intel Core i5, 5, 7, and 9. And that's when we start to talk about some of these NASs that have got serious management on board. Same goes with the HEVC, which has the potential, of course, to actually play because it's going to convert the file. So it does have the possibility that even though it's a heavier file, the system, as you can see, is converting it. So with server-side conversions, you're able to play this file when there is absolutely no way in heck this file would have played on that 1823. And if it did play, it would have played with so much CPU utilization that you would have struggled to call it a successful smooth run. And let's end the video on our biggest file, the 400 megabit per second HEVC file there, which of course the system will need to convert. But thanks to integrated graphics, it does have the hardware resources on board in order to attempt it, and it looks like succeed. So as you can see, even our heaviest file can be played on a NAS that has integrated graphics on board. And let's summarize today's video and bring me back on camera because I'm spectacularly arrogant. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video on our testing of the Synology DS423 Plus, and I hope you've learned a lot of things. We've crammed a lot into today's video, much like we have in our other Plex videos. If you want to learn more, we have done a full guide for this NAS, a massive review that spanned well over an hour, as well as our before you buy video that was only around 20 to 25 minutes for you to check out. On top of that, lots of comparisons between this NAS and others, as well as this NAS with other NASs in the Synology portfolio, which I recommend you check out. But had you wanted to learn more, below there'll be a link to the full article where we've bench tested this NAS on Plex Media Server Performance over on NAS Compares. And on top of that, there are links to other videos and articles on this NAS and others. And if you need help with your NAS and choosing the right NAS the first time, get it right first time as a multimedia solution, use the free advice section link below that will take you to the big blue button on the right hand side of the page to ask myself and Eddie on the free advice section for any help that you need. Alternatively, use the free community forum Ask NAS Compares, where me, Eddie and other members of the NAS community will answer your questions. And finally, if you found this video or any of my other videos helpful, and if you were going to shop at Amazon today, please use the links in the description to take you to Amazon. It costs you nothing to use them, and when you get there, it results in a kickback from Amazon going directly to NAS Compares, where it's just me and Eddie running this channel, and it allows you a passive way to support content creators like us to keep doing what we do. But only use that link if you were going to go to Amazon and this video has helped you decide, or any of my videos has helped you to decide on a NAS product. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.